everyone. My name is Pei Jiawan. I am the Director of Global Asia Research Center, also known as GARC. The center was established in 2017 thanks to a generous donation from Kim-Koo Foundation in South Korea. The foundation is in honor of the memory of Kim-Koo, the famous Korean patriot and leader of the Korean independence movement against Japanese colonization. With this gift, we are able to establish Kim-Koo Professorship at National Taiwan University. Each year, we invite one distinguished international scholars who has contributed excellent scholarship to Asian studies. In the past 3 years, we were unable to invite Kim-Koo Professor due to a pandemic. We are very pleased that we can finally resume the program and host our honorary speaker this year. So let me introduce our 2023 Kim-Koo Professor, Dr. Gi-Wook from Stanford University. He is a director of the Walter Shorenstein Asia-Pacific Research Center since 2005, the founding director of the Korea program, and also the William J. Perry Professor of Contemporary Korea in Sociology. As a historical, comparative, and political sociologist, his research has concentrated on social movement, nationalism, developmental issues, democracy, and international relations. He has published or edited 25 books and numerous articles. In this summer, Dr. Shin will launch the Stanford Next Asia Policy Lab, covering 4 research themes: talent flows and development, nationalism and racism, U.S.-Asia relations, and democratic crisis and reform. This lab will bring scholars to produce interdisciplinary, comparative, and policy-relevant studies on Asia. So we look forward to more exchanges and collaboration between GARC and the Stanford Next Asia Policy Lab. During Dr. Shin's 10-day visit at NTU, he is teaching a mini course on talent giants in the Asia-Pacific century. He kindly shared with us the finding from his new book, in which he compares various talent development strategies from the leading countries in the Asia-Pacific region, including Japan, Australia, China, and India. In today's public talk, he will discuss another timely subject: South Koreans' changing public sentiments from anti-Japan to anti-China, and discuss the implication for the Indo-Pacific region, including Taiwan. So without further ado, please join me to welcome Dr. Shin.
Okay, thank you, Professor Lan, for a very kind introduction. It's really my honor to be Kim-Koo Professor at this university. As you may know, I grew up in Korea, and certainly Kim-Koo is a national hero in Korean history. And I left Korea in 1983, 40 years ago, and then coming to Taiwan to be Kim-Koo Professor. It's really meaningful, and really thank you for your kind introduction. So I hope that my visit also can facilitate more collaboration between U.S. and Taiwan, especially between Stanford and NTU. Okay, so I'm going to today talk about anti-China sentiment, which could be a little sensitive to some people. So who are like foreigners here, not Taiwanese, like from China, Korea, Japan? Okay, so anyone from China? Okay, no? Okay. But anyway, so what I'm going to do is really based on my research and also my reflections. there's no political statement, so don't interpret what I'm going to say as a political statement. Okay, so I'd like to make it sure. Okay, if you look at Korean history, we have seen many kinds of anti-foreign sentiments. Okay, when I was in college in 1980s, very strong anti-American movement, like Yankees go home. That was very popular slogan at the time, and I'll come back to that later. But also, anti-Japan sentiment has been in Korea for a long time. This is actually, very interesting, important difference between Korean and Taiwanese experience of Japanese colonialism, right? I mean, here I don't see any strong resentment against Japan, right? But in Korea, almost opposite. Still, very strong anti-Japan sentiment among Koreans. And when I say something about Japan in Korea, I gotta be a little careful because they're saying you are too pro-Japanese. Okay, but here in Taiwan, I don't think that's the issue. So, anti-Japan sentiment is nothing new in Korea. And Korea has seen anti-American sentiment some decades ago. But now, in the last few years, very strong anti-China sentiment. Okay, this is really new. I mean, of course, going back to 1950, during the Korean War, Koreans, Americans fought North Koreans and Chinese. But at least since normalization between South Korea and China in 1992, Korean attitude towards China has been quite positive because China was considered the land of opportunity for Korean business. And as you may know, Koreans have been, I think maybe still, even today, the largest international student in China. So if you go to Beijing University, you see a lot of Korean students, shops and so on. And I think Chinese students have been the largest group among international students in Korean universities. But then things began to change. Okay, so this is kind of a trend from 2004 until last year. So you can see that here. I think this is very important. So around that time, Korean view of China and United States, quite similar. Fairly, positive. And then if you look at view of North Korea, of course, always very low. And then some spike. That's when there's some summit diplomacy between Pyongyang and Seoul and Pyongyang and Washington, but then decline again. And with Japan, where's Japan? So it's always pretty much low, right? I mean, so here like a 21, now back to like 33, but still, even when it was positive, only like a 30-40%. And I'm sure if we have similar survey from Taiwan, much higher than this one. So in a sense, nothing really unusual or striking. But what really stands out is Korean view of China. So here, quite positive. Like as of 2016, about 60% of Korean had very positive view of China. But then now, really sank. And then now, it's even lower than Korean view of Japan or North Korea. When I think about it, that's really striking. So we'll come back to this issue, but that's when South Korea deployed THAAD, high altitude missile system, and then China retaliated economically. So even like big Korean department store like Lotte, some of you may know Lotte had to close. Okay, and then that really hurts, and then just keep going down. So right now, South Korea-China relationship is really in bad shape. But on the other hand, view of United States really became much more positive. So, I mean, that's kind of story, let's say, especially in the last 5 or 6 years. So I'm going to talk about today what happened and what is going on and what's going to happen. I mean, it's hard to predict, but then I try to at least share my thinking or implication for the future. So before that, I have to say that what's happening in Korea is not really unique to Korea. It's been happening in other parts of the world. So let's take a look. So this is Korean view, of course, like the negative one really spiked. And then this is in Australia, okay? So you may hear some story about tension between Australia and China, right? And then now it's about almost same as Korean. And this is in Japan, about 87, even higher. And this is in the States, about same. So Korea, Japan, Australia, they are main allies, military allies of the United States in Indo-Pacific or in the Asia-Pacific region. So you can see that very high anti-American sentiments in those key countries. So if you are Chinese or working in the Chinese government, I mean, you got to worry about, because public sentiment is very important in affecting foreign policy. So I don't know, maybe somebody watching my talk virtually, and they might be a Chinese person. I mean, I don't say it's everything is a Chinese fault, okay? And then as I'll show you, it's more about perception, and sometimes perception is correct, but not always. Sometimes wrong. But nonetheless, this should give concern for the Chinese authority, because these countries, Japan, Korea, Australia, they are also important countries for China. It's not only for U.S. or Taiwan. And then here more broader data, but then basically very similar trends. And I think Taiwan also fairly negative, but then actually the lower than Korea or Japan. So maybe I guess Taiwanese are usually more, I don't know, more friendly towards other powers. Okay, so you can see that the trends in Korea and also comparatively. Okay, so that you can have some big picture before getting into more specific stories. Okay, now then let's look at what happened in Korea that provoked anti-China sentiments. So it's just like a few stories. So one is like cancellation of historical drama, Joseon Exorcist. I don't know, anyone happen to watch this one? So actually, during pandemic, not much else you can do, right? So one thing was watching K-drama, drinking California wine, right? A good combination. So I think my wife is here, and we are watching. And I think after 2 episodes, they canceled. This was aired on SBS, which is a major TV station. And I think complaint was that the customs, I think they were depicting, I think, Goguryeo era, and a long time ago. Then Korean, especially netizens, young people, said that those costumes are not really Korean, it's Chinese. I mean, so it's like maybe 2,000 years ago, who knows? But then SBS invested a huge amount of money. I think like, I don't know, quite a big, big money. And then I think after 2 episodes, they had to cancel because public outcry was so strong that the station couldn't stand. So that's why I was kind of shocked. My God, I mean, costumes. I mean, who knows? At the time, there may not be a clear distinction between Korean and Chinese, but still, Korean young people especially, they were very upset and then protested, and then it had to cancel. The other one also, Gangwon province is like the eastern side of Korea, and then somewhat underdeveloped area. Okay, and then they are building in a Chinatown to attract Chinese tourists. I mean, that's important as a source of revenue for province. But then they got also protest saying, why are you building, Chinatown in our own territory? I mean, come on. If you go to San Francisco, large, great Chinatown, and they had to cancel too. So they already made investment, but then public protest, and the province had to cancel. I think some Koreans are really tough, right? And then also, controversy over, hanbok, Korean traditional costume, and kimchi, and especially also during Winter Olympic in Beijing, that became a big issue. So, because during opening ceremony, I think Chinese were, showing costumes of ethnic minorities. It's not only ethnic Korean, but I think there are many others. So, but then Koreans complained that, why you are showing our own traditional costume, right? I mean, that's why I'm saying, that's why some of them, maybe right, some of them wrong actually. So, but then, living in the United States, we had a discussion with my students. There's some Chinese, Korean, and some other Asian as well. Okay, then what if we did that in, let's say, in Los Angeles during Olympic? Would you have a similar protest? Probably not, okay. Or okay, let's say if they show all other ethnic minority except Korean, okay, then Korean would protest. Why you're excluding us, right? So, I mean, that's why it's very difficult issue. And then I talked to some ethnic Korean scholars in China, teaching in Chinese university. They were very upset too, because why and how South Korea can only claim the right to Korean tradition, because we are ethnic Korean living in China. We have our own right to claim our own tradition and culture. But then those opinions were not really reported in the Korean media, but I exchanged some email with Korean scholar in China. So I mean, that's why some of them, it's hard to believe, but then still that adding more negative view of China. And so, I mean, there are more, but then like here, National Museum of China distorting Korean history because they excluded information about Goguryeo and Pare kingdoms, because in Korean history, these are very, very important. So, basically, Koreans saying that China is distorting Korean culture, Korean history, and customs, and so on. So, frankly, as a scholar, some of them I'm just almost laughing, right? But then it had a real political power, I think, among Koreans, I mean, that's a power of nationalism because people can be very emotional. And then if you don't buy into or if you don't agree, then all of a sudden you become anti-nation or anti-Korean. I mean, that's a danger of nationalism. Okay, so then let's go over some key factors. Once again, some of them make sense, some of them more like perception. So one is air pollution. I think Taiwan has pretty good air, right?
Not always.
Not always, okay. But if you go to like Korea in the spring, air pollution is really, really bad. Okay, I mean, of course, Beijing is much worse. But a lot of Koreans believe that air pollution came from China. I think there are some elements coming from China. But I think if you really analyze, probably more coming from Koreans' own, right? I mean, carbon and other stuff. But then, if you talk to like average Korean on the street with bad air, again China, so that's actually one factor. The other one, COVID-19, and I think many Koreans believe that COVID came from China, and then China mishandled, and then they had impact on Korea. But once again, empirically, you can do research and maybe debate, but in terms of perception, that was very important. And then early days, Korean president. And then I think early days, there's some mask shortage in China, and South Korea sent some masks as a good gesture, okay? Like, friends are real friends when they help each other during difficult time. But then some Koreans got mad, why sending, masks to China? Because we need the mask as well. And then, but I think, but here probably is more, I think maybe more real issue. I mean, these are more perception. But here, like when Korea deployed THAAD, okay, then China really came back against South Korea very harshly. And I think probably China wanted to teach a lesson to Korean. But actually, because of military alliance between US and South Korea, if US asks deployment of such a weapon, then Korean is supposed to provide the land. Okay, so that's what happened. But then, China really targeted Korea, not United States. And then, once again, I think Korean products were boycotted by Chinese. I mean, that's why even big department store like Lotte had to close. And I think basically Chinese stopped coming to Korea. So I think at the time, I talked to some Chinese friends. I mean, it's like your government telling you not to go. No, say no, it's not the way. But there's a lot of social pressure. So that if you go to Korea in this political environment, then you see like sort of not patriotic person. So there's a lot of pressure, and then they stop coming to Korea for a while. So I think economically it hurt Korea quite a bit, and I think that was wake-up call for Korea. I think looking back, I think China should have done more carefully, because I think China wanted to teach a lesson to Korea, but then it kind of backfired. They really created resentment among Korean people, kind of wake-up call saying, after all, China may not be our friend. It may be imperialist in a country. So that was really turning point. And also there's some disputes. I think in the spring or winter in the Yellow Sea or Sea of West Sea. it's like great for crab. And then I think some Chinese ships coming over to the line, and then also U.S.-China trade war. So I think these are very important issues. So I think in my view, these are more perception, and some of them I'm not sure, but these are more real issue, and I think there's some policy issue. But I think one thing really interesting, this is probably the main point of my talk. Now Koreans care more about political and human rights issue. And I think regarding Taiwan, to be honest, with all due respect, Taiwan was forgotten for a long time. Not only Americans, but also Korean, because it's all about China, right? So that Taiwan wasn't really getting much attention, but now with all things happening with China, in the U.S., also in Korea, people paying much more attention to Taiwan and also Hong Kong and Uyghur and so on. So now I think Korean people, especially young people, realize that after all, China is authoritarian communist country that we don't really share values each other. So this is a pure survey for Korean people. So do you think the Chinese government respects the personal freedoms of its people, or don't you think so? About 92% say yes, and they say no. Okay, they don't respect. Okay, so this is very important outcome, because that shows how the Koreans perceive China. Okay, so in the past, once again, land of economic opportunity, but now really authoritarian states, violating political and human rights. And then their view of Xi Jinping became very negative. So of 12 countries surveyed, Korea had the second most dramatic increase in negative opinion over last 8 years, from 37% in 2014, last year, like 87%. Very negative view of Xi Jinping. So, by and large, there's a correlation about their view of Chinese system and then their view of China. And then certainly historical and cultural issues are very important for public. And I already talked about historical project and kimchi, hanbok, and so on. So when I'm traveling, let's say Dongbei in China, like northern parts, or Vladivostok, or maybe North Korea, kimchi are quite popular. To be honest, if I say this to Korean, then they'll say you're crazy. But if you're going back to like 3,000 years ago, who knows, right? Dumpling. What's the origin of dumpling? Do you think it's Chinese or Taiwanese? What do you think? What's the origin of dumpling? Chinese? Yeah, I think you believe it's Chinese, but I don't know. It may come from Mongolia, because if you go to Mongolia, they have like meat, dumpling, and once Mongol ruled China, right? But then if you talk to Turkey, they believe dumpling came from Turkey. Okay, so that's why these issues are very tricky, and then it's hard to say which is right, which is wrong, but still perception matters. And I think for Korea, those historical issues, cultural issues are very important. Okay, then who's the most vocal? This is also very important, because Korea is quite unique in this respect. So basically, those in 20s and 30s. Okay, so regarding like anti-American sentiments, I think more like my age or a little younger generation, like 50s and 60s. And then, in 1980s, we are fairly anti-American and somewhat sympathetic to, China or even Maoism. So I remember some of my friends are reading, Mao's books. Like, oh my God, so you're reading Mao, right? So, but then now, very different. Now, younger generation, maybe like many of you, they grew up in advanced liberal democratic society. Taiwan, Korea now, in many ways, advanced country with liberal democracy. I think for them, it's very hard to accept China as like a good nation. So I think here you can see that the feeling toward China by age, certainly younger people are more critical. I think this is quite unique to Korea. And then certainly, in social media, really amplifying. And the younger people tend to use more social media. I don't do any social media, but I'm sure a lot of young people do a lot of social media. So, this is about like regarding building Chinatown in Gangwon province. I know that it is not normal to push for historical sites and to build a Chinatown. I sincerely hope that the Chinese don't come to Korea. I'm not going to experience Chinese culture. So what can you say, right? So those kind of sentiments really, fueling anti-China sentiment. So once again, comparatively, Korea is the only country that younger people are more anti-China. In other countries, more older people, but only in Korea. So that's quite interesting. Okay, how I'm doing in terms of time? I'm okay? Okay. So here probably you can briefly compare regions for anti-China versus anti-Japan. So here regarding China, about like cultural conflict, historical conflict, and like China's lack of respect for Korea or something like this. So these are key factors, as I mentioned. But then with Japan still like about comfort woman, forced labor, like this island, Dokdo in Korea or Takeshima in Japanese, and some policy and so on. So I think main regions in terms of Korean view of China and Japan are quite different. So I think here I'm trying to briefly compare anti-American with anti-Japanese and anti-Chinese sentiment. And then I'll talk about implications toward the end. In 1980s and also maybe early 2000, there were very strong anti-American movement. And, eventually I went to United States. But I almost went to Germany because at the time, some social pressure that if you go to United States, then you are going to study imperialism, right? Also in sociology, like Karl Marx, Max Weber, they're all German. So actually during my college, I studied German. So maybe I should have studied English, then maybe I have better English now. Yeah. But then at the end, my father said, you gotta go to United States. Still, it's a country to go. That's why I went to US eventually. But then some of my friends actually went to Germany. But still, I think at the time, it's many critique of US policy, especially perception that US was supporting Korean dictators like Park Chung-hee and Chun Doo-hwan and so on. But it's not really against American people or American culture or institutions. Still they respected American institutions like universities. So at the time, there's very kind of joke that Yankees go home, right? Please take me with you. Kind of an argument, right? So in other words, we are criticizing US policy, but still we respected American culture and institutions. So when it comes to Japan, it's really about colonial rule. I mean that's why once again Korea, Taiwan quite different, and I think Korea they are trying to remove or clean out any legacy of Japanese colonial rule, and I mean still there are disputes over like comfort woman and forced labor, and it's very hard. I mean so. But still, Koreans, they kind of still like Japanese fashion, culture, food, and still they saying we have to learn from Japan, in business and so on. But I think when it comes to China, in my view, it's more like critique of Chinese cultural imperialism and then illiberalism. Okay, so once again, regarding hanbok and kimchi. I think Koreans believe that it's an expression of Chinese cultural imperialism, okay, and also they don't like a Chinese system of communism and authoritarian politics. So I don't think many Koreans say that they should learn from China or respect its institutions. So. I've been, I haven't written on anti-American and anti-Japanese sentiments. Now I'm working on a paper to write on anti-China sentiments. So I think overall, I don't know. I mean, Korea is a relatively small country in Northeast Asia, but they have very strong national pride, and then they always try to stand up against big powers, whether it's the U.S., Japan, or China. Okay, so then let's look at more current, more geopolitical issue. What are implications? These are my own reflections. So right now, Korea has very pro-American or pro-alliance president. Okay, and then I think it's fairly anti-China. So think about the political leader who's very pro-alliance, also public opinion. So right now, Korea is really tilting toward the United States and moving away from China in both political leadership and public opinion. So I think one paradigm for Korea for a long time was that U.S. for security, but China for economy. Now that paradigm doesn't work anymore. Now U.S. really pushing for linking economy with the security issue, right? I mean, re-establishing supply chains and so on. I mean, Taiwan also getting pressure as well. So I think now Koreans more support pro-American policy or position. So here we are in Taiwan. In a recent interview with Reuters, President Yoon Suk-Yeol said that increased tension around Taiwan were due to attempts to change the status quo by force, which means China, and he opposed such a change, creating outcry from Beijing. So this is really important because no previous president would say that, because then obviously it will invite strong protest from Beijing. But now he's willing to say that, and then of course I think response to his statement in Korea were divided, but still I think he's willing to say that, and I think it may have some implication for South Korea-Taiwan relations. But nonetheless, the picture is more complicated. I mean, they like to be more pro-American or pro-alliance, but some Koreans feel they are betrayed by the United States. Okay, one issue is like IRA, Inflation Reduction Act. So I think because of encouragement or even pressure from the United States, Korean companies like Samsung, Hyundai Motor, SK, they made a lot of investment or pledged to invest in in the United States. I mean, TSMC made a huge investment in Arizona as well. But then, IRA will give some tax credit to electric vehicles, EV. But then, only giving credit to car using batteries made in the United States. So I think most of Korean car, like by Hyundai, Kia, they were excluded. So I think Koreans saying that it's really betraying our goodwill, and I think it provoked some reaction. But I think more seriously, this is quite serious one, and I love to hear about Taiwan situation. But now, about 2/3 of Koreans support South Korea going nuclear. Okay, this is also very significant change in recent years. So I think there are two reasons. One is North Korea, right? I mean, North Korea is a de facto nuclear state. They keep improving missile capability, and including me, I don't think any experts believe that North Korea will give up nuclear weapon, right? Why would they give up, right? So then means that South Korea has to live with nuclear North Korea. I mean, over the last 30 years, U.S., Korea, Japan, I mean, we have done a lot of things with North Korea to dismantle nuclear weapon. I mean, I was quite involved in the policy discussion and some implementations. So I think during Trump, for example, this summit, and I mean, I didn't like Trump, but then still, I thought he might have a chance to do something with North Korea because he was meeting with Kim Jong-un. I mean, North Korean leaders always wanted to have a summit with American president, but no American president can possibly meet with North Korean leader. But Trump did, but still didn't lead to any solution. So that's one reason. That's why South Korea now said that we should go nuclear. But the other one about credibility of United States deterrence. So in other words, can you really trust United States? Okay. So I mean, this may apply to Taiwan. I'll come back to this issue, but then let's say, what if there's a war over Taiwan or Korean Peninsula or both? I mean, you are dealing with big China. You are dealing with nuclear North Korea. I mean, if you rely on United States, then what if you say sorry, right? What are you gonna do, right? So I mean, that's why this public opinion reflects, in my view, nuclear North Korea and about American credibility. So I think that's why last month, today's June already, right? So in April, in Washington, South Korea and Biden and Yoon Suk-Yeol, they agreed to create a nuclear consultation group. So which means that now U.S. and South Korea will talk more closely about nuclear issue. But then in return, South Korea promised that they're not going to develop nuclear weapon. So I think it's a better deal for U.S. than South Korea. So anyway, so that's really happening right now. It shows that how volatile the geopolitical situation in Northeast Asia. And in the same line, it's very important to have very close collaboration among U.S., Japan, and South Korea. But then, because of a history issue, Japan-Korea relations still is not great. So Yoon Suk-Yeol went to Tokyo for a summit in March, and then when he came back, he lost at least a 5% rating. Okay, so still not really embraced by the public. So I think that really comes down to Taiwan question. Then I love to hear your opinion, whether you agree with me or you disagree. But I think over the last maybe couple of years, there's a lot of discussion about Taiwan in the United States, even in California, like Stanford. So as I mentioned, when I went to graduate school in 1980s, and one of my classmates came from Taiwan. I had one Japanese, one Taiwanese, and one Korean me. There's no Chinese at the time. And we are talking about comparing Korea with Taiwan, economic development, democracy. But then with the rise of China, Taiwan was forgotten for a long time. But now people talk about Taiwan again. There are two things. One is China, the other one TSMC, right? So the question is, what if China really moves against Taiwan? Okay, and early last year, not many people really believe that Putin will invade Ukraine. I mean, there are some concerns and some discussions, but then I think more majority view was that in the end, Putin may not invade, full-scale war, but he did. I mean, he's strong, but he did. And now, what about Xi Jinping? I mean, so I think from their perspective, I'm not saying I agree with them, but from Putin's perspective, Ukraine was part of Russia or Eurasia, so he wanted to leave a legacy, right, as a Russian leader to unify the territory. I'm sure Xi Jinping has the same dream, same vision, right? So he wanted to be remembered as a leader to unify whole China, right? I mean, Hong Kong, now Taiwan. Okay, then now in Korea, some discussions are then what about North Korea? If China comes to Taiwan, then North Korea will just sit back and enjoy? Probably not. They might take something. If not get full-scale war, then they might, make some provocation, right? I think someone was like, I don't know, someone was very cynical then. Well, then maybe they'll destroy both Samsung and TSMC. Then it's a plus for United States. I don't think that's the case. But seriously, if I mean, this is a worst case scenario. If there are two wars in the region, okay, Taiwan and Korean Peninsula, can U.S. engage two wars? I'm not sure. At least American public opinion may not support. So I think that's why now it's very important to have very close collaboration among U.S., Japan, Korea, and also Taiwan. I mean, as you know, Okinawa becomes very crucial in defending Taiwan from China. Okay, so here are some Korean views on Taiwan. I mean, overall, quite positive. I mean, here you can see that how positive or negative do you feel about the foreign country? Taiwan, only like so these are positive ones. So about 60%, I guess, right? So more positive. And then also about people. This is also quite positive about Taiwanese. And then more importantly, this is about if something happened in Taiwan. So what Koreans should do. So about 2/3 of Koreans agree that South Korea should provide support for U.S. military operation, Taiwan contingency. So I don't think South Korea can fight China directly, but at least support United States. But then here like about 35% say U.S. Korea forces should only be sent to safe zones. Okay, but then about 30% saying even dispatched to the military zone basically. So I think right now, Taiwan is getting more attention in Korea too. And then I think they are willing to support U.S. operation against China in case of contingency. But still, overall, for Koreans, for maybe understandable reason, North Korea is more important than Taiwan. So that's quite sure. So then finally, and then there's some question for discussion. So one is looking back, could the emergence of anti-China sentiment in Korea have been more limited or even contained, or was it inevitable with the rise of Chinese power in the region and world? So I think when I talked to some Chinese people, including some in the government, I said, I mean, you guys, were too aggressive because, Koreans really wanted to get along with you, then, overthought, and then, so probably now China may be a little cautious, but still now China-ROK relations is really sour. I mean, that's really one challenge for Korean diplomacy. And then how will the rise of anti-China sentiments in Korea and elsewhere affect the dynamics of regional relations in Northeast Asia? So I think one thing, I think maybe it's a good time for Taiwan and then Korea to actually get together, have more discussions, and then collaborate. Because as I said earlier, Taiwan was kind of almost forgotten among Koreans, but now Korea is paying more attention. I think this year, I heard that Koreans are the largest tourists to Taiwan. And I believe that because in my hotel, I see many Koreans speaking Korean, right? So I was quite surprised when I see the reports. I mean, now Koreans are the largest tourists to Taiwan, I think also to Japan. So it's quite promising, at least among people, there are more exchange. And I think now some people are hesitant going to China. So maybe that's why they're going to Taiwan and then Japan, Taiwan or Japan. So, and then, are we entering a new Cold War? I mean, some people believe that may lead to real wars that I talked about. I don't want to, make any false alarm, and I still like to remain cautiously optimistic. But at the same time, we have to get ready for the worst case scenario. And I've been telling Korean and other people saying that, there's always a danger of an earthquake in California. I mean, it doesn't happen every year, but if it happens, you can be hurt, right? So we have to get ready for earthquake every time, right? So in a sense, maybe similar. And I mean, there are different opinions about military conflict in Taiwan or Korean Peninsula, but still I think we should get ready. Especially, we don't really have any strong global leadership. I mean, that's also one concern for me personally, because I don't think U.S. is providing any good global leadership. Trump lost the election, but he may come back. Biden, I expected much more from him, but then I don't think he's showing any strong leadership. And if you go to Europe, I mean, UK has become joke, right? In France, Macron also struggling. In Germany, after Merkel, I don't think any strong leadership. But on the other hand, Putin and Xi Jinping, they keep strengthening their power. So that's why it's not really easy situation right now. So I think all of us, including you, we should think more carefully, seriously, and then engage in good discussions. So I'm going to stop here. Then I welcome your comments, any critique or counter argument. Thank you so much.